Are you working in Davinci Resolve just to have your RTX 2080 Super run out of VRAM? But when you try to upgrade to the RTX 3080, they only sell it with bundles. Buy lah the RTX 3090. I don't believe the economy is so bad right now that a 7,000 to 8,000 ringgit graphics card can just sell until no stock.
Hey boss, actually RTX 3090 also shortage leh.
Purposely one. Like this rare only you guys will pay attention ma, because today we're gonna be reviewing the Gigabyte RTX 3090 gaming OC from the perspective of not only a gamer but a content creator. No matter if you're an architect, 3D designer, animator, or even a YouTuber. This video is for you. So listen up, kings and queens. It is time to go green, stay mean, scroll in, because this is the giant kingpin magic bean that will help you conquer your 8K screen. Clever leh. Subscribe lah. Now we all know that the RTX 3090 is no regular graphics card. I mean, it is huge, has a lot more VRAM than the RTX 3080, and you can now game in 8K. The question is this a card that performs more like a regular consumer graphics card, or does it perform closer to the Titan or Quadro that is meant for professionals? One thing's for sure, this is meant for bangsawans. I mean, this Gigabyte RTX 3090 gaming OC is not the BF GPU that Jensun was swinging around, but it is still 7,899 ringgit. So before we dive into the performance, let's take a closer look at the 3090 and what it has to offer. Now I'm pretty sure by now you guys must be quite familiar with the RTX 3000 series. Here are some of the features that were brought over from the RTX 2000 series, and first and foremost, we have RTX real-time ray tracing, which is a technology that simulates the way light behaves in the real world, and they put it into virtual spaces like game spaces and make things look more realistic. You'll notice more realistic reflections in surfaces as well as more realistic shadows. Next, we are looking at an improved version of the DLSS, which is now called DLSS 2.0. Okay, here are the differences between DLSS 1.0 and 2.0. So DLSS 1.0 is actually trained per game, and it compares against super sample ideal images for results. It has a fixed 4x scaling, which means you're gonna get from 1080p to 4K. In comparison, DLSS 2.0 is trained generically. It uses motion vectors and other game data to actually improve the output. Now we have 4 different settings. We have a performance, which is the 4x scaling that is the same as DLSS 1.0 from 1080p to 4K. We have balance, which is a 3x scaling from 1296p to 4K. And we have quality, which is a 2x scaling from 1440p to 4K. And finally, we have ultra performance, which is a 9x scaling from 1440p to 8K. Next, let's talk about the elephant in the room, which is 8K gaming. Now 8K in terms of resolution is actually 7680 by 4320 in terms of pixels, and that is about 4 times more pixels than 4K, and because of that, you have to deal with 4 times the data, and your VRAM needs to be beefed up. So basically, per frame, we are looking at 128 megabytes of data just for the pixels alone, without considering things such as textures, models, screen space effects, and things like real-time ray tracing from RTX. So in order to game in 8K, you actually need a graphics card that can output in 2 new standards, which is the HDMI 2.1 and DisplayPort 2.0. Then you need a monitor or TV that has those inputs as well. Now 8K displays are not exactly affordable yet, but some bangsawan early adopters such as my friend went out and bought a 16,000 ringgit LG 65-inch Nano 95 TV. So I went over to his house to play some games with my 3090, and I didn't get any footage because it was his house and he didn't want to invade into his privacy. But here are some of my observations. First and foremost, 8K at such a high resolution has basically made anti-aliasing irrelevant, because I couldn't tell a difference between having it AA on and off. So you could save some computing resources which were previously used for AA and help to push out more frames. That's number 1. Number 2, gaming on a huge display for PC gaming, especially in FPS titles because you need to get closer, is now viable. I could get up to about 3 feet to the 65-inch TV without seeing any discernible pixels or lines, which means that you can get close to a huge display and game for PCs. But there's one issue that I noticed, like with some titles, the character models look super high-res, but some of the textures such as the wall and floor in the set and the level design is actually not as high-res, and when you look at it as a whole, it kind of breaks immersion because of the contrast between the high-res models and the lower-res sets. And also, one more thing, just now we mentioned about DLSS 2.0, it actually makes more AAA titles and games in general viable in 8K because it up-reses 1440p footage up to 8K, and while it's not as good as native 8K 100% if you pixel peep, it gets closer to 8K than actually native 4K. Some titles, on the other hand, don't even need you to use DLSS 2.0 to be viable, such as Doom, which Linus has tested and we have attested. Overall, 8K gaming is really impressive and you need to be there to see it in person, but I think that it will take quite some time before it becomes the norm. Finally, let's talk about AI, which is all the rave right now. In fact, Exec Corp from the US of A, which is a global supplier of computing products and solutions with an extensive portfolio in building workstations and servers for AI, actually said this: for deep learning, the RTX 3090 is the best value GPU on the market and substantially reduces the cost of an AI workstation. AI is very crucial and contributes to many groundbreaking advancements in many industries. In gaming, we use it for DLSS. For video calls, we have NVIDIA Maxine, which works to upscale low-res webcams, track a moving subject in a room, switch out the background, remove environmental noise, even real-time speech translation, and efficient AI video compression, which makes slow internet less of a problem. In video production and content creation, which is what we do, in the newest version of Blackmagic's Davinci Resolve, their neural engine uses the state-of-the-art deep neural network and learning along with artificial intelligence to power new features such as speed warp, super scale for upscaling footage, auto color and color matching, which will save you a lot of time, facial recognition and more, which will make the life of countless content creators and video editors much easier. You can even use AI to process video footage such as doing enhancements like body and face slimming, masking out unwanted objects, rotoscoping and such. And I know, it's already 2020, why are we still body shaming? Well, everybody has their own insecurities, and if you can use AI to actually elevate one's confidence, why not? Now let's take a closer look at the aesthetics of this card. Now this card is definitely minimal and sleek. It is actually mostly black with gunmetal accents. The shroud on top is made of plastic, but it is a pretty rigid plastic. The construction of the entire card is actually pretty rigid, pretty solid, especially thanks to the full metal backplate that is relatively thick from what I can see. It uses Gigabyte's WindForce 3X cooling system that features 3 fans, 2 that runs in one direction and another that runs in an alternative direction, 7 composite copper heat pipes, and a massive copper plate that directly touches the GPU. We'll test this out to see how well it actually helps dissipate the heat from this card, because this is a beefy GPU. One thing that is interesting is that Gigabyte stated that they are using a graphene nano lubricant that will extend the life of the sleeve bearing in their fans by 2.1 times, which will be closer to a double ball bearing fan, and it is also quieter. Now for those of you guys who are unfamiliar, graphene is actually a very interesting material because it is essentially a single layer of carbon atoms arranged in a 2D honeycomb lattice structure. Some of the most outstanding properties of graphene are high thermal conductivity, high electrical conductivity, high elasticity and flexibility, high hardness, and high resistance. It is a very interesting and new material. Next, we have RGB Fusion 2.0, which will allow you to customize the RGB, and in this case, we have the illuminated Gigabyte logo on one side of the graphics card, and that's about it. So if you want more RGB, this might not be for you. In my case, I just want a little bit of RGB, so this is actually perfect for me. So here are some other features that come with the Gigabyte RTX 3090 gaming OC. First and foremost, we have the dual BIOS. Gigabyte stated that this card comes with 2 different BIOSes. One is the OC mode, which is set to by default, and the silent mode in case you want to run this card in a more quieter environment. Also, Gigabyte state that they have improved the power phase design to allow the MOSFET to run at a lower temperature, and they have also used ultra durable certified chokes and capacitors to provide excellent performance and longer system life. In fact, this RTX 3090 gaming OC actually comes with a 4-year warranty, which is pretty impressive for a graphics card. In terms of specifications, now this card is aptly named the BF GPU by NVIDIA, or as we like to call it, the Big Ferrocious GPU. This beast is 129mm tall, 320mm long, and occupies 2.5 expansion slots. In comparison, the FE card actually measures 138mm tall, which is taller than this card, and 313mm long, which is shorter than this card, and occupies 3 expansion slots. This Gigabyte RTX 3090 gaming OC is slightly lighter than the Founders Edition, which weighs in at 4.84 pounds. This card is actually 4.68 pounds or 2.12 kilograms, which is almost as heavy as your roasted chicken dinner, which is usually 5 to 7 pounds. For those who want to build a high-performance content creator PC or the highest-end gaming rig with this graphics card, make sure that you meet these requirements. First and foremost, your case needs to have a very solid GPU mount to support this chicken dinner weight. Make sure you have enough clearance in your case to accommodate its massive stature, and your PSU needs to be beefier because this graphics card has a minimum requirement of a 350 watts power consumption. It is very demanding in terms of power. And finally, make sure that your CPU is very strong. A Core i9 from Team Blue will work well, or a Ryzen 9 from Team Red. Moving on to the specifications. As you can see, the 3090 is an Ampere graphics card. Like the 3080 uses the Samsung 8nm process. It has the same transistor count and die size as the 3080, but a lot more CUDA cores at 10,496, more Gen 3 Tensor cores as well at 328, more Gen 2 RT cores, more T-flops, more ROPs, a slightly lower base clock, a slightly higher boost clock for this card specifically at 1755 MHz, a whopping 24GB of GDDR6X VRAM, a slightly faster memory speed than the 3080, a bigger memory bus that is the same as the Titan RTX, a lot more memory bandwidth at 936GB per second, uses an 8+8 pin or a custom 12 pin power connector, and finally it has a whopping 350 watts TDP, which is insane. So here are the specs to our test bench. Firstly, let's start with synthetic benchmarks, and as you can see in TimeSpy Extreme, the 3090 is about 6% faster than the 3080. In Unigine superposition, we're looking at an 11% improvement in 4K optimized DirectX, and also a 12% improvement in 8K optimized DirectX. Now to the games. In Battlefield 5, in the 4K resolution with DLSS on and RTX on, we're looking at a 16% improvement on the RTX 3090 over the 3080. With DLSS and RTX off in 4K, we're looking at a 14% improvement over the 3080. Now in Shadow of Tomb Raider at DX12 in the highest preset with RTX set to high, the new 3000 series graphics card has a huge performance leap over the previous RTX 2080 Super. In Death Stranding at the very high settings, because this is a very optimized game, we are looking at a 1 to 6% improvement over the 3080, which is okay. Native 8K is a reasonably playable 30 frames per second on the 3090, but with DLSS on, we are looking at 76 frames, and that's crazy. In Minecraft, with ray tracing and DLSS on, we're looking at a 24% improvement on the 3090 over the 3080. In 4K native, however, the 3080 is actually a little bit faster. So we tested a new game, which is Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War. As you can see in native 4K, it is completely playable with 67 frames on the 3090 and a 59 frames on the 3080, which is about a 14% difference. But with DLSS in the performance mode, we are getting over 100 frames in both 3080 and 3090, with the 3090 getting a 10% lead over the RTX 3080. In 4K with DLSS off, it is actually completely playable on both graphics cards, with the RTX 3090 taking quite a bit of a lead over the 3080. But when you turn on DLSS performance mode in 4K, both graphics cards went over 100 frames, and the 3090 actually took a 2-digit percentage lead over the 3080. And that's impressive. So here are some other 8K gaming benchmarks that I did while hanging out at my friend's place. His PC was actually pretty similar to our test bench, so that's good. In Forza Horizon 4, DLSS was unavailable and we're still getting 69 frames per second. In Doom Eternal, we're looking at about 51 frames per second, which is completely playable unless you're an FPS freak. In Control, with DLSS on at 8K, we're seeing about 50 frames per second, still completely playable. Moving on to some productivity real-world benchmarks. In Premiere Pro, we tested these graphics cards with a file that we have been using all this while, with both the game-ready driver and the studio driver. The RTX 3090 actually performed about 2% faster in both game-ready and studio drivers. But as you can see, with the studio driver, you're gonna get a little bit more improvement in the render times. In After Effects, with the studio driver, we're looking at a 5% improvement on the 3090 over the 3080. Now I'm gonna set up a new benchmark in the future with heavier utilization of the graphics card so we can see more of a difference between the different GPUs. In V-Ray GPU only with the studio driver, we're actually looking at a 23% improvement on the 3090 over the 3080. With CUDA, we're looking at a 12% improvement on the RTX 3090 over the 3080. And in optics, we're looking at 11% improvement on the 3090 over the 3080. Finally, we ran this graphics card with a 100% load test in Firmark with the 4K preset at 8x MSAA, and the Gigabyte RTX 3090 Gaming OC barely broke 70 degrees at max. So those were some pretty impressive numbers. In fact, here's an observation that I can make based on all the RTX 3000 series GPUs that we have tested so far, and that is the fact that Nvidia was telling the truth when they said that this was gonna be the single biggest leap in generational performance. Well, it still depends on the task that you're doing, but we have seen about a 75% to 100% leap in performance compared to the previous RTX 2000 series GPUs. So here's the verdict, and let's start with the pros with the RTX 3090 first. First and foremost, the raw performance improvement is actually really impressive compared to the previous generation, and this is now the best prosumer/consumer graphics card that you can get. Secondly, the new DLSS 2.0 AI upscaling allows 4K to be a reality and makes 4K pula. It's already a reality. 8K to be a reality, and it makes 4K even better. It is like the icing on top. It is like the kaya on your toast. It is like your girlfriend on you. No, correct. That was wrong. Number 3, this is good bang for your buck. And I'm not saying this because I'm a bang sawan who thinks that 7899 for this graphic card is super the cheap buy. I'm saying this because if you're already a very serious creative professional or content creator, you're probably running a very geng chao PC already, which has a very beefy 1000 watts power supply and a very strong GPU mount to handle all this weight. So to optimize your PC to work with this will take no more money. This graphics card is like the nasi to your lemak. Without it, you are just lemak. With it, you are now nasi lemak, very delicious. Number 4, the RTX 3090 is now the only card that supports NVLink. You know why you want NVLink? 2 is better than 1. Number 5, and here's the point that goes to the Gigabyte RTX 3090 Gaming OC, and it is the fact that this card runs really cool. In fact, at full load, we barely saw it break 70 degrees, which is really impressive. And also, it is relatively quiet. Now, we don't have the equipment to test the noise levels of all these graphics cards, but I left this in an open bench next to me for the past 2 weeks while I was doing all these benchmarks, as well as video editing, something relatively heavy that utilized 100% of the GPU, and I didn't notice it get distractingly loud. I had headphones on, but I was using open back headphones, so you can still hear pretty much everything around you, and I found it to be relatively quiet compared to some of the different graphics cards that we've tested before. Next, let's look at the good. First and foremost, we're gonna talk about the price tag, which is $1,579.99 US or 7,899 ringgit. A lot of you would think that this is a pretty steep price for this GPU, but in my point of view, that this card is built for people who are pros or semi-pro, and if you can afford this card, it will probably make your workflow and stuff like that better because it is actually spec'd more like a Titan, and actually there is where the similarities end. This card may look like a Titan and is built like a Titan, but it doesn't run like a Titan because certain features such as the Titan driver optimizations are actually disabled on this card, so that's quite a shame. Finally, let's continue with the cons. See what I did there? First and foremost, the power consumption is a real thing. If you use this for anything but professional work, you are not gonna like the power draw, which is why if you are a gamer or anybody like that, I would actually recommend that you get the RTX 3080. Number 2, this is actually a pretty niche card. It is not really a professional's level card because you don't get all the Titan optimization features and stuff like that, so you can't really use it for a super professional work. But it is also not a consumer's card because it's not as affordable. This is built for a very specific audience, maybe someone like me, who is a bangsawan that just wants the best gaming GPU you can get out there. Most gamers otherwise would actually be better served with an RTX 3080, and that's a fact. So that's all pretty confusing. So Shane, what's the conclusion? First and foremost, if you want the king of gaming GPU right now, this is it. If you're a bangsawan who can afford it, 7899 is #cheap buy. Go and get. Number 2, if you're someone who's a content creator and you do most of like video editing and all that stuff without needing super professional features that are only reserved for Titan and Quadro graphics card. Also, Exact Corp from the US said that this is the best bang for your buck for an AI workstation GPU right now. If you do AI and deep learning, here you go. I give this graphics card a very solid 8 out of 10. Why didn't I give it a 9? I wish it had more RGB, but that's a matter of taste. Highly recommended from Mob House. And if you thought this video is awesome, don't forget to like and share. Leave a comment down below to let us know, would you actually buy an RTX 3090 or would you prefer the RTX 3080? Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the notification bell, and follow us on Facebook and Instagram to see more shenanigans from the Mob House crew. And I will see you in the next one. Bye!